positions. We have promoted one of our staff to the lead supervisor position. She has several years of experience, and we are interviewing for the other voter supervisor positions that are open. We are in the process of hiring several new staff. We have people who have started already. We're in the continuous interview process. We have ramped up hiring and training for new intermittents, and we've contacted all of our previous intermittents, and many of those folks are returning, which we're very excited about. They come back year after year and do a great job for us.
Thank you. Anything else as far as either the recorder's office or elections is concerned, staffing-wise? Okay. Moving on, possibility of going to live meetings. Lavoie, you raised this issue.
Well, I believe we had
you have to turn it on. There's a little push button down at the bottom.
A little green lights on it. Oh, right?
If the green light's on, you're good to go.
Got it. Okay. So I looked in the notes for previous meetings, but I believe in the previous meetings last fall, either October, I think it was November, we had an agreement, I'm pretty sure, that we would follow the course of the Board of Supervisors when it came to live meetings and all that kind of stuff. So I sent a note to Mary when the board went to live meetings saying, hey, it's time for us to follow the board. So here we are, although personally I would prefer going back to our other meeting location.
Well, one of the things that I found out while we were doing meetings virtually is we were being live streamed to the world. Anybody could watch the meeting. I figured that out when I saw myself on TV when I wasn't aware that was going to happen. And I met with the acting county administrator and felt it was imperative that if we've set that precedent, we need to maintain that precedent. This room and the room on the first floor at the Abrams Conference Center, I believe, are the only two that are set up to handle live streaming meetings at the same time. And I don't want to go back into a cubbyhole and pretend like we're trying to avoid something. So we'll either meet here or we'll meet at the Abrams Center, and I think it'll be, location will be determined by availability of facilities more than anything else. But because we had such short notice for this meeting, we decided to make it a hybrid meeting rather than a totally live meeting. But beginning in April, we will meet in person and exclusively in person, unless something happens with the BA.2 variant of Omicron virus. So plans going forward are to continue to meet in person and location to be determined by available space.
I have no issue with that. I agree. I think that it's imperative, it's important to meet in person unless there's an emergency. I mean, somebody's got an emergency, they need to dial in, that's fine. But we believe that the board needs to be in person.
I would prefer the Abrams Center if there's a choice.
So would I, but we'll take what we can get. Summary of election bills and laws. Barbara.
Yeah, I requested that, and we did get a report from the county lobbyist. I checked yesterday with the legislature. It appears that the only bill that ever reached the governor so far is the one it includes dealing with precinct committee people, and that is definitely right now being looked at for repeal because both parties don't care for it. And 12 bills were killed in committee with the end of last week, and I don't think, as far as I can tell, there is anything moving very quickly towards the governor at this point.
Okay, yeah, I think we're looking at a longer session than anybody anticipated. So, Mary, do you know if Mr. Rassi is going to be able to join us next month to address this issue, or is that a day-by-day thing?
He said he would be available to join the meeting in April.
In April, okay. Would you make sure that he gets on the agenda?
I will.
Thank you. Next, introduction of David Wisely, Program Specialist, and Victor Garcia, Administrative Support Specialist.
Okay, Victor Garcia was the person that was answering phones, and he's a little inundated right now. So I brought Jesus Federico, who is our new trainer, and I think you all know David Wisely, but I wanted to make sure that you knew who these gentlemen were because they will be at the meeting next month.
Is this a new role for David, or just a new title?
Or is it the same old title and the same old person?
Same old title, same old person. Just Mary wanted to make sure if you guys need anything, let me know, and we'll try to get it to you.
Okay.
I'd like to just add my welcome to Mr. Federico. That's a very much needed position, and we're going to have a tremendous amount of training required this year in the transition to vote centers. So very much appreciate you coming forward to take that position.
Mary, is that position sort of a replacement for Michael Dale?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else anybody has on this issue? None. Review of progress on the implementation of vote centers and e-poll books. LaVoy?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about a review of the progress on this very complex, very important item. So I've got some questions, I guess, for whoever. Is somebody who's managing this program present can answer questions? David, are you considered the program manager on this?
No, a member of 10X is really managing the program wholly, overall, but I would be for Pima County elections.
So we have an outside third party managing this implementation.
I may say guiding us through it would be a better way of looking at it. So he's asking the questions that we can answer so that they design the workflow that the iPad takes the poll worker through.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ordering of the materials, all the iPads, the printers, the delivery of those pads, all that equipment, the delivery, the checkout of all that stuff. How many iPads are we ordering, by the way?
We are ordering 300, I believe.
Okay, so we've got 300 iPads.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's actually the recorder's office who is ordering the iPads because our responsibilities are split. So, and since the number of vote centers have changed, you may want to ask Pam what the current number is.
Yeah, I guess we'll get to that. I saw the list was 124 or something like that, not 100.
Yes, I think we looked at 129 at the moment.
Okay.
We're at 129 at the moment.
Okay, 129. Missed by 5. All right. So,
Wait,
I guess the basic question is, when we did the plan, somebody did a plan on this initially, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. What was the planned completion date of all of these deliverables, the setting it up, the testing of it, and getting it ready to go? What was the planned completion date on that? Can you tell me that?
The plan completion date, I don't have in front of me, but roughly 60 days before the primary election to have everything ready to go.
Before the election or before we start voting?
Before the election, I think.
So backing up from August 2nd, 60 days?
Correct.
So that put it about, let's just say June 2nd. For
that was our, everything should be done by that time.
Okay. Does that include the training of the workers and everything?
No, workers are always trained 2 weeks before the election.
So you've got a brand new system. You think that's enough time to train the workers?
The reason we train 2 weeks before the election is so that they retain it. The system is actually simpler than what they've done in the past, even though they're familiar with the past.
Right.
Yes, 2 weeks.
Okay.
We were planning that we may bring in top people, our most experienced inspectors to come in and train prior to that, so we can refine our training, because they'll give us feedback saying, we did not understand what you meant by this, and then we can adjust training so that it's more effective. But
right. I would assume you bring those top people in, not only train them, but run simulations with all the equipment and voting. That way they can refine the training, because it's never perfect from the beginning. I've done training for people. Okay. Right. So back to the plan completion, is we're talking about June 2nd. If you were to look at your project schedule, okay, and you look at your critical path on that project schedule, what does that show you as actual, according to your schedule, completing the project? Is it, because it should show you in there whether you're going to be right on June 2nd, you're going to be early, be late. So can you address that?
I think at the moment we're about on track. Yeah. I would like to be a little farther along, but that's because things always happen. You know, I'd like to be ahead of the schedule at the moment, but I think where we sit right now, we're on track.
Yeah, that's my point. Things do happen. You're right.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that will be able to do in the next couple of weeks that should put us ahead of schedule, especially now that we've got a couple of additional bodies. Because some of the things that kept us from progressing was questions on how we were going to train and what skill set our trainer would have. Well, those have been answered. So now we can push ahead with more confidence. And so even though we're on track at the moment, I think we'll be ahead in a couple of weeks.
So if I were to look at a schedule for something like this, hopefully you've got one, you look at a critical path this, I'd have to believe that the equipment deliveries and all are right in smack dab in the middle of that.
We're starting to, well.
I guess my question, if I may, excuse me. Sorry about that. Turn your phones off, folks. So, what was the delivery schedule for the equipment when you did this whole thing? And how does that compare with the promised delivery as you have it today?
Well, so we were expecting to get early April most of the equipment, or mid-April. The printers, because we're no longer going with Oki, but we're going with Lexmark, and it's the newest version of Lexmark that they've tested, that the BOD printers won't be available till sometime in May. So that would be the last part of the equipment, but we already have examples of everything else except for the cradle points, so that we can, as we are bringing the software up to speed, starting next week, we're starting to test our procedures on the iPad so we can know if this is working for us, what we need to change. So we have examples of some of the equipment now, so we can actually start modeling our workflow. But the rest of the equipment, I will have to go back and look and see what shipping dates are.
Well, right, you're telling me you've got a new printer, which we're just now getting integrated, which 10X is just now getting integrated in the system, and you're expecting deliveries in mid-May. That's worrisome. It's a little worrisome, okay?
It is. It'd be better to have all the equipment on hand now, but Lexmark is a major corporation, and they have assured our vendor that they will be able to supply us.
Do we get any recompensation or whatever if that assurance is not met?
I'm sure we'll be very upset.
It doesn't do us
So,
much
yes,
good.
no, we do, I can check in to see what all of our options are. I can also, and I will check with our vendor. Also, Pima County, outside of our vendor, may be able to acquire some of these because they have purchasing abilities.
Right.
So,
Just two last questions. One is I would hope that you would be planning to pull all the equipment out of the boxes, check it out, make sure it's all working, then integrate. You're going to have specific systems for each polling center.
correct.
So I would hope you'd be taking all that equipment, integrating it, testing each one of them, making sure each piece of equipment's working, printers are working, they've got plenty of ink or whatever they use. I don't know what they use in them, kind of thing. Sometimes these vendors send printers. They've been known to do this. They send you with cartridges that are not totally full. I don't know if you're aware of it. I've seen this. I'm not sure they're still doing this, but they've been found guilty of this in the past. So that you're forced to buy an ink cartridge down the road. That's where they make their money, a lot of these people. So
Yes, we plan on assembling the equipment for each voting center because it will be treated as a unit.
Okay.
The iPad, the printer, all of that will be one unit going to a vote center. We'll assemble it as a unit, run it through a series of tests to make sure it functions correctly, and then pack it up as that unit for shipping. Most of the testing of the equipment can be done prior to the arrival of the printers because we're not getting it all at once. I would prefer to have it all at once so I could do everything at once. But once we have that initial set of tests that we know everything short of the printer works, we can, when we get the printer, that last piece of the puzzle, I've talked to our warehouse manager about clearing a space in the warehouse so we can be setting up several units at a time, running through a series of tests, packaging it up. By then, we should have a number of our intermittents, and we can also use that as training experience. So our intermittents who would not be as familiar with the equipment at that point can set up the polling place using the equipment. Then we walk them through a series of tests, then they break it down. So this will be for us training for how we need to train our poll workers as well. Once we have, and so then Jesus can use that data when he starts to train. So if our intermittents have a problem, a lot of it's color-coded, so the red plug goes into the red port. Well, if there's a red and a pink, that they know there's two, or whatever the issues that come up as our intermittents are learning to assemble and break down the polling places. So that's basically my plan with the equipment, that we will test each as a unit because they're going out as a unit. And any component of that unit could fail in theory, although they're all fairly reliable components.
And you have plans for backups at each polling station in case one of them craps out.
Correct.
Okay. Last question is.
And then we'll have a number of backups off-site that we can run to the polling place in case of emergency. You always have to have multiple backups.
It's going to be pretty hard to do for some of these rural areas.
So we would keep them with their rovers, may have additional equipment, so that rather than having to come from our warehouse, they could come from the rover. But I want to reassess making sure that that's secured in such a way that they wouldn't be able to do anything. And depending on the level of need, it might be one of my people to go and replace hardware.
Last question. Do you have a plan, or in your plan, is there a point in the plan at which if stuff doesn't come together, printers, whatever, that you pull the plug and say, we can't do this? Is there a point in your schedule that says that? I see a shake.
Yes, and, we are already doing the groundwork for our normal setup. We're doing how many ballots we would have to order for each place, or we would need if we had to go to a traditional style. I think, won't speak for the recorder's office, but I think would be prepared to create paper rosters or whatever we would have to do. Yeah, it'd be a mad scramble, but we've had those in the past.
Okay, well, as long as there's a backup plan, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you for that. So I would like to kind of do this on next month and possibly next month, just to make sure that we all have a status report on this kind of thing. It's a very important project, as we all know. So
yes, and I can get better numbers and information for you, being more prepared next time.
okay, that's fine. Well, you didn't give much notice this time. I apologize for that. So,
that's okay.
but those are, I'm happy.
Pam,
Yes?
has the recorder ordered, is the equipment actually on order?
Yes, the delivery order is being prepared. I actually just answered an email a minute ago about that. We are actually ordering 400 of the iPads, of the poll pads. We are having bi-weekly meetings with 10X and the elections department. Our staff is working with 10X directly to refine the process for the voter file being uploaded and used appropriately in the poll pads. We did test that during the pilot that we did last November. So we're refining that process now. And we have begun to staff up for processing that new equipment as it comes in to go through the process that Mr. Hurley mentioned. We're pulling everything out, testing every little piece of it that needs to be tested. So that's the planning for that is well underway.
And has the board approved the final locations of the vote centers, or is that something that's going to happen in the future? And if that's the case, what is the anticipated approval date on vote center locations?
That's a question for the elections department.
Excuse me. The board hasn't approved those yet. It will be sometime in April.
Okay.
I'm not sure which meeting in April.
So we don't have anything cast in stone as far as location of vote centers is concerned until next month.
The list went out to all the stakeholders in Pima County, and we are still receiving input from those stakeholders. Okay. And they have till the end of March to do that.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Can I have a question?
I do have a couple of questions. With regard to the finalization of the polling place or the vote center locations, keep in mind that each of those locations has to be contracted, and that is a fairly complicated process that is underway now. The exact locations that will be approved by the supervisors will be decided later, but there is an ongoing process now to get those locations under contract. I have a question, or just a comment from Mr. Federico on the training. I'm hopeful, and I don't expect a response from you today, but I am hopeful that 10X already has some training products available that we can utilize. I'd like to see if we can to have some level of training available virtually so that people can refresh their training as necessary, and so that the public could be aware of what kind of training the poll workers or the vote center workers did receive. I have a question for Mr. Wisely. In the past, when we've had presidential elections or presidential preference elections where we combine a lot of precincts together into one voting area, the canvas is not reported in a precinct manner. It's reported by voting area.
Yeah.
Maricopa County uses vote centers, but they report their canvass in precinct discrimination. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that in our vote center configuration as well, because it's very important for the political parties, especially, to be able to determine voter turnout, which voters voted, which voters didn't vote in which precincts. And in line with that, I'm hopeful that we will be able to have a report that will show us how many ballots were cast in each of the precincts, because this is a new thing for us in the county. We don't know whether people are going to go to the vote center nearest their residence, or if they're going to vote on the way to work or in their office area, or what they're going to do. So we need to be able to capture their voting patterns, both in the primary and the general of this election this year, so that we can make adjustments down the line to best serve the voters where they want to vote. So I'm hoping that we can capture that information as well in the various reports that we get out of the system.
So I haven't had the opportunity to design an election with vote centers, but my expectation is I should be able to produce, I will produce the data by aggregate, by the summary and by precinct level detail, so that the normal early polls and provisional data will be available by precinct. But I should be able to also produce it by vote center. So you will know, I don't think I can do precinct level by vote center, but I may be able to. So essentially the ballot style by vote center. So I'm not sure if I can get that fine detail, but I will be able, I should be able to get our normal distribution of votes and as well as the summary by vote center.
Well, I'm hopeful that's something we can capture in the cast vote record as well, to see which vote center a ballot was aligned with.
So it should be available. I will see what comes up in the cast vote record.
Okay. One other item on the iPad reports that might be available. One of the real benefits of that iPad, as I see it, is being able to capture a voter history record right away. That's one of the really important things that happens on election night. As ballots come in from the vote centers, they will then be counted in the central count. But we want to make sure that we have an alignment between the ballots that we're going to count and the number of voters that were involved. I think we can draw that out of the iPad, but I'm just wondering, does that iPad have the capability of printing out a paper report so that the people that are overseeing the counting of ballots can have the number of ballots that came in, the number of voters that signed up on the iPad, say, yeah, those numbers either match or they don't match, and then take appropriate action?
So we normally produce a ballot report from each precinct or each voting location at the end of the night that the inspector and judge fill out. We are working on how we want the ballot report to appear on the iPad and have that printed, whether it's by the thermal voucher printer or if it would be on ballot stock. I've got to see which would function better, but have a report printed from the iPad for that location that the inspector and judge would sign, and also do their physical tabulation. If they have a report that says 20 people voted a regular ballot, they count and make sure they had 20 ballots in that box. And if in the past, if we've had any discrepancy, like they threw a spoiled ballot in the box, and that's why it is. So that there's checks for everything the poll workers do on that night. we will try to continue that so that at the location, they print a report that they can sign off on and make sure their totals match. But we will also be able to print a report there at Election Central, and before any ballots ever get to us, I can have a list of how many ballots should be from each vote center, so that when my people start tabulating, if there's any discrepancy, we can account for it.
Well, that'd be good to know, because there's always allegations about extra ballots coming in or getting lost or whatever. So we need to have a clear accounting that we can present to the public after the election to say, no, here's what really happened.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I'll stop there.
All right. Just for the information of the other commissioners, I did make a suggestion to the county administrator that we need to look at, I think, developing an app that would be available on a smart device, either a phone or a pad, or I guess in your car now, that would tell you that you're near a voting center and the wait time there is this much, but there's another one 2 miles away or wherever. I know whenever I want to know where there's a restaurant or a fuel station or whatever, I can ask my smart device to give me directions, and it is able to do that. And I think that would be very helpful if we have the capability of doing that, to present that to the public as well.
Yes, one of the things that this equipment will allow you to do is that thermal voucher printer will print a timestamp upon request, and the marshal can take that to the last person in line. And when they come forward, it can scan it and give you your wait time that way.
Well, I appreciate that at that location, but for election administration purposes, it'd be better if you, as the director of all these troubleshooters that you have out there in the field, would know that we're getting a backup at this particular vote center versus there's a lot of space over here at this other one, or they're running out of paper, or whatever's going on that's causing a delay can be corrected right away.
And they can report that to, the inspector can keep us informed on all of that through the iPad.
All right, thank you.
But we can do a better demonstration of that later.
Thank you.
The request, going back to the equipment, once you have a station all assembled, ready for testing, I would like to be able to see that watch it being tested also. Can you arrange for the commission to either have a test or invite us down as individuals to look and see how it works?
Yes, I'd be more than welcome to set that up. Of course, making sure my new boss agrees to it.
You mentioned thermal printing. I
Yes.
would hope you're not planning to use that for anything that has to be kept as a record. Thermal printing is very unstable. The ink fades and all that kind of stuff. So I would hope you're not going to plan on using that for any kind of record that has to be kept.
Well, the retention is only 22 months, I believe, and it should be good for that. But no, I'll bear that in mind.
Thermal ink is not very stable.
Okay, I will bear that in mind.
I got the impression this was something that the system had the ability to print on election day, and if you want to know how long the wait is, you print out a thing that has the current time on it, and the inspector walks out and gives it to the last person in line. When they show up,
right,
43 minutes later, there's an anticipated 43-minute wait. So, no, I don't think we're looking at printing ballots or anything like that.
He just said 22 minutes on some of the, 22 months on some of the stuff. That's what he just said. So that kind of stuff should not be printed with thermal ink.
Yeah, okay. All right, anything else as far as vote centers and review of progress or anything like that is concerned? Okay, the resolution as a whole or in parts to the Board of Supervisors regarding vote centers. Arthur, this was your project.
Right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I've had discussions with the Libertarian Party about these things, and we are concerned about the ability to forge ballots at the polls using the new system. And these Senate Bill 1120 in the state Senate is addressing these same issues, and it has a list of 19 provisions. But my understanding is that if all of those were implemented, it would make the ballot 25 cents per ballot would be the cost to the counties to print up a ballot, and it would also possibly require, if that excuse me, if that Senate bill was passed, it would require every county to use the same identical ballot paper and stuff like that, and possibly from the same company even. But our thinking is that some of these provisions for making the ballots more difficult to forge are things that we could do in Pima County. The first one that I listed was using paper with a distinctive watermark. And the second one was serialized ballots with a perforated detachable receipt that would go with the ballot. The third provision was non-visible serial numbers.
Chairman, I'd like to raise a point of order.
Yes.
Mr. White?
Did everybody get a copy of this the proposal?
Mr. Chairman, this proposal was presented to us in an email attachment sent out by Commissioner Kirshen in violation of the open meeting law. And any action that we might take on this would be void as a matter of law. The resolution has been put forward as a suggestion to the Board of Supervisors upon their approval of vote centers and e-poll books. So it seems to me that the entire proposition being put forward is moot, because the Board of Supervisors has already approved vote centers and the use of e-poll books. The nature of the proposal is in the matter of legislative language, which, as the Commissioner Kirshen has just indicated, is a part of a bill that was put forward in the legislature that is dead in the legislature. So I'm not sure what path we should take on this, but if this does move to action by this committee today, I will vote no.
I'd like to also suggest that Mr. Kirshner make a motion, and then we can see if there's a second, and if there's not, we do not move on.
Mr. Kirshen, would you like to make a motion as to the status of your document?
Well, I would like to move that we enact this suggestion to the Pima County Board of Supervisors. So I so move.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I think Mary Preble was going to second, but she left the meeting a few minutes ago.
Hearing no second, the motion dies for lack of a second. That brings us to future agenda items. Is there anybody that has anything that they would like to see on the April or the May agenda?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of information. I got a note from Mary Preble that she left the meeting. Apparently she had her hand up for discussion, wasn't recognized, and decided to leave.
Future agenda items.
I think we need to continue the legislative items, the progress on the vote centers and other aspects of the election, and I hope we will be able to meet the new elections director at the next meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
Several of us will be observing the city election. If you'd like to report on that, you can make that report. The election is May 17th.
Okay. Wouldn't be at the next meeting then.
Mr. Chairman, did we not talk about the vote centers themselves, or is that not on the agenda? We were given a list of vote centers in the email, and yet we never really went over that discussion here. I had a couple of questions.
That was part of the discussion on the implementation of an establishment of vote centers. I mean, and given the fact that the Board of Supervisors hasn't approved vote centers or vote center locations yet, I don't know what we'd accomplish by saying it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Well, my only point was that most of these on this list don't meet the criteria. Most of the vote centers on the list do not meet the criteria established in the letter.
Okay. Any future agenda items other than those? Mr. Rassi, if you would make him aware that we'd like to hear from him on the status of legislation, and more particularly if he has information on it, on the lawsuit that's currently pending before the Arizona State Supreme Court, if that hasn't been resolved by then. While we're introducing personnel, if Ms. Hargrove could be here, it would be great. And it's my understanding that you will not be here after the 1st of April. Good luck in your future endeavors and whatever you choose to do going forward.
Thank you very much.
Mary has done an absolutely wonderful job over, I don't know how many years. She seems like she's been here forever, and we're really going to miss her.
Thank you very much.
April meeting date is April the 15th. Anybody have any problems with that date?
Would it be possible to move that to the 22nd? I realize that's the third Friday, but it's also the day that taxes are due.
I'd have a good excuse for not sending my check in if I were here. Anybody have a problem with moving the April meeting to the 22nd, which would be the fourth Friday?
If that's a motion, I would second it.
Yeah, I like that better.
I move that we have our next meeting on April 22nd.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The April meeting will be April 22nd. Does anybody have a calendar and can tell me what the third Friday in May is?
Yeah, I've got one.
It's the 20th.
May 20th.
May 20th.
May 20th.
May 20th. Okay. Any objections to having the May meeting on the 20th? Okay. April meeting, April 22nd. May meeting, May 20th. This meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.